Today for our daily reading, we are in 1 Peter 3 verse 1 to 7. And I've got to say, I am so pleased to be able to share my convictions and beliefs about this passage, because I feel that the church has got it so wrong in the past on this topic, or certainly taught on this from a skewed, one-sided, manipulative perspective. Wives, submit to your husbands. So we wrongly get this scenario of husbands using the Bible to say, wife, God says you need to submit to me. And that is so wrong. But let's just remind ourselves very briefly here on the context of 1 Peter and on this section that we're reading. It's all about our witness to the world. It's about our submission to God through how we relate and submit to others, how we relate to government, servants and masters, spouses, husbands and wives. As we talked about yesterday, slaves, submit to your masters. The Bible was not condoning slavery or encouraging slavery. Peter was simply saying, given that this is how it is, woven into the fabric of culture, here's how to live distinctively and differently within the culture. Here's how to thrive in the culture. So when Peter says, wives, submit to your husbands, he says it, I think, for two reasons. Firstly, as part of your witness to them if they don't believe in Jesus. You know, imagine a couple, one comes to Christ, it's part of your witness. Secondly, he says, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. It's about unity. Now, there has to be a contextual historical reading of what this means when it says, wives, submit to your husbands. And I'll tell you why. Because people who insist on this don't insist on the next bit. The very next bit from verse 3 is about not having braided hair or not wearing gold or fine clothes. When the Bible references how someone dresses, like in 1 Corinthians, it's really about living within cultural norms, so as not to undermine our witness in the world. A little bit like maybe a missionary to the Muslim world living in a Muslim country might wear a hijab so as not to undermine their witness. It's contextual, it's a principle that's applied. But also notice that really important phrase for husbands in verse 7. It says, husbands, in the same way, be considerate, in the same way. What on earth can that mean other than mutual submission? Submit to one another. I think we see a similar thing in Ephesians chapter 5 and 6. Wives, submit to your husbands. Children, submit to your parents. Slaves, submit to your masters. But we rarely start those verses with verse 21, Ephesians 5:21, that says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Mutual submission. So undoubtedly, in my mind, when you read the whole of the New Testament, it teaches mutual submission. Submit to one another. And here's how wives can submit to husbands. Here's how husbands can submit to wives, by being considerate to them. Now, let me get a little bit theological here, because this is so important. You see, how can we check if this idea is right? Two ways. One, look at how it plays out in the nature of God, because of all of Christian life is about imitating God. Do we see mutual submission in the nature of God? And two, place this verse, wives, submit to your husbands, in the whole sweep of Scripture. Go back to the beginning. So, mutual submission, do we see it in the nature of God? Of course we do. Of course we do. Father, Son, Spirit, co-equal, totally equal, and yet submitting to one another. The Father sends the Son, and the Son submits. The Son is obedient. The Son sends the Spirit. The Spirit submits, totally obedient. Total equality, mutual submission. We call it functional subordination, if you want to take that idea further. What about in the whole sweep of Scripture? Well, when we go back to before the fall, to Genesis chapter 1 and 2, Eve is created as a suitable helper for Adam. The word helper is the Hebrew Ezer. It does not denote inferiority because the same word Ezer is used for Yahweh. He is our helper. And suitable is kenegdu, one who stands boldly face to face, eye to eye. What made Eve a suitable helper for Adam was that she was his equal. So God's intention in creation was equality, mutual submission. Now move forward, chapter 3, to the fall. What is lost through sin, through the fall? Genesis 3, because of sin, God says, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. Sin, brokenness, the fall bring inequality and domination into marriage. And I feel so strongly about this because we are God's new covenant people. We are called to bring heaven to earth and in effect to partner with God to reverse the impact of the fall, to restore things to how they should be. So whenever I as a man treat someone as less equal to me, whenever I say or believe, this person or this sort of person needs to submit to my authority, I am cooperating with the fall. And that, my friend, is a biblical definition of sin. And yes, of course, you may have a different idea, good for you if you do, but what we know from Scripture is that the role of local appointed leadership is to define theology and practice within that local body. And that is what we believe at Frontline Church.